What's up guys, Jared again. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse burst into theaters in 2018 and was immediately met with critical acclaim, eventually crescendoing into an Oscar win for Best Animated Film. It's a rare film to surpass 90% approval ratings amongst both critics and audiences on Rotten Tomatoes, and quickly established itself as a fan favorite. Importantly, based on Wisecrack's unscientific and anecdotal evidence, the film was also an incredible conversion machine, turning decidedly non-comic book lovers into Spidey stans in just under 2 hours. So what makes this movie so intoxicating? I mean, besides the obvious magnetism of Nicolas Cage's acting.
Sometimes I let matches burn down to my fingertips just to feel something, anything. Oh.
Okay, but seriously, is it the charismatic, relatable, non-shoelace tying Miles? Is it the trippy visual aesthetic, Spider-Ham, or is there something deeper going on here? And does it have anything to do with Charles Dickens? Let's find out in this Wisecrack edition on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Deep or Dumb. And as always, spoilers ahead. Alright, let's dive into a recap. Meet Miles Morales, a Brooklyn kid who hates his pretentious new boarding school Visions Academy. While graffitiing a subway service tunnel with his cool Uncle Aaron, Miles gets bitten by a radioactive spider and, well, you know what happens. Trying to figure out why his hands are so sticky, Miles returns to the scene where he stumbles upon Spider-Man trying to stop Kingpin from using a deadly particle collider to access another dimension. The experiment gets cut short, and Spider-Man gives Miles a thumb drive to override the collider before getting killed by Kingpin. Still green at the whole Spider-Manning thing, Miles swiftly destroys the drive by accident. Miles finds out that Kingpin's particle collider did partially succeed, at least in summoning a bunch of other Spider-Persons into his dimension. Among them, the older, dad-bodied Peter B. Parker, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Penny, Spider-Ham, and Spider Academy Award winner Nicolas Cage. They team up to defeat Kingpin and return to their dimensions. Miles becomes his dimension's new friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. The end. So, is Spider-Verse deep or just an emotionally engaging, heartwarming feast for the eyes? Let's review the evidence. Argument 1. Miles' quantum arc. The film's first suspected reservoir of depth rests in the journey of newly anointed Spider-Man Miles. If we weren't sure what the central theme of Miles' arc is, the movie pretty blatantly telegraphs it right up top when he and his dad discuss his life.
We all make choices in life.
It doesn't feel like I have a choice.
You
right
don't!
now.
Peter Parker echoes this sentiment once Miles has been bitten, telling him that becoming Spider-Man ain't optional.
I don't think you have a choice, kiddo.
But what's exceptionally clever about the film's exploration of choice is the way it's reinforced through recurring references to quantum theory and quantum mechanics, scientific concepts central to the plot. In an early scene, Miles' science class watches a video about the topic. In it, a civilian-clothed Doc Ock explains,
"Our universe is in fact one of many parallel universes happening at the exact same time."
Here she outlines the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which holds that there are many parallel universes existing in the same space and time as our own, including a tragic dimension in which I shaved my beard and Woody was dognapped by pirates. Anyway, Doc Ock goes on to say that
Every choice that we make would create countless other possibilities. What if to infinity?
Here, the film invokes an aspect of quantum mechanics, the idea that every opportunity yields multiple possibilities which ripple out, eventually creating countless more possibilities. Although relevant to Miles' outer conflict, having to save the multiverse with his pals, it also mirrors Miles' inner conflict, confronting the fact that every choice is a leap of faith down a diverging path, one that has ripple effects. We see this early on through the motif of Miles' shoelaces. It starts with Miles' dad telling him,
Tie your shoes, please.
Then when a random student says the same, he replies,
Hey,
Yeah?
your shoe's untied.
Yeah, I'm aware. It's a choice.
Even Spider-Man soon joins the chorus.
Did you know your shoes are untied?
Still, Miles continues to rock the untied look. Fittingly, this choice has a consequence. He trips over his laces and breaks the thumb drive he needed to disable the accelerator. Here we see the power of choice and the consequences of one's choices literalized. The theme of choice and diverging paths is reinforced by contrasting versions of Peter Parker. The first one has lived up to his responsibilities to protect New York and died a hero as a result. His foil, Peter B. Parker, the type B of the two, is the less than perfect Spider-Man who chose to alienate his wife, fall out of shape, and spend a lot of time crying in the bathtub instead of saving the city. Their shared name and essential attributes suggest that they could have gone down similar paths, but the ripple effects of choice and the infinite possibilities presented by those choices led them to become very different spider dudes. A similar dichotomy exists in the contrast between Miles' dad and Uncle Aaron, each offering a unique path for Miles' future. Miles exists in a flux between his lawful dad and his cool Uncle Aaron, who likes to indulge in some light artistic vandalism. Early on, Aaron tells Miles that his dad also used to be a rule-breaking punk before he made the choice to straighten out and become a very rule-abiding cop.
Oh my gosh, don't cops run red lights?
Well, yeah, some do. But, not your dad.
In contrast, Uncle Aaron's rebellious streak has led him down a drastically different path, one which involves working for Kingpin, killing people, and generally being a not great guy. In his final moments, Uncle Aaron reflects on the gravity of his mistakes.
I wanted you to look up to me. I let you down, man. I let you down.
This functions as an interesting reversal of the Uncle Ben story, in which Spider-Man lets a robber go, only to find out that this very robber shot and killed his beloved uncle. In that narrative, he blames himself for making the wrong choice. In contrast, this time, it's Uncle Aaron, not Miles, who blames himself for the series of choices that led him to die in an alleyway and leave his nephew uncle-less. Just as the death of Uncle Ben taught Peter Parker that he has to use his powers and use them responsibly, the death of Uncle Aaron teaches Miles that his choices can easily lead him down a regrettable path, and that he must take responsibility for those choices. The dire mistake of not taking responsibility for your choices is also embodied in Kingpin, who can't live with himself for driving his family away, such that they literally drove away and got into a car crash and died. The ripple effects of his actions have left him all alone. Rather than accepting responsibility, he tries to reverse fate by summoning his family from another dimension. So we see several characters accepting varying levels of responsibility for their choices, as well as the ripple effects and diverging paths that come with those choices. The central question of the film becomes, what kind of person, and specifically what kind of spider guy, will Miles become in the universe of this film? This calls to mind another aspect of quantum mechanics, the Copenhagen Interpretation, which a few physicists dreamt up in the 1920s. The theory postulates that an object can and does exist in all possible states. For instance, are photons particles or waves? Well, sometimes they act like particles, and sometimes they act like waves. Quantum mechanics uses the term superposition to refer to multiple possible states existing at once, say a wave or a particle, or an alive cat or a dead cat. Metaphorically, Miles exists in a kind of indeterminate superposition between two extremes. He exists in both the state of becoming like his criminal Uncle Aaron, or like his honorable cop father. But here's the thing about superpositions. When somebody observes the object in question, its superposition collapses, meaning that the object is forced to choose a probability. That is, become either a wave or a particle. In the film, it's not literal observation that forces Miles to choose which state to exist in, although he certainly is being observed by his fellow spider people. Rather, it's the immense pressure of the task at hand. So what decision is he going to make? Well, at the beginning of the film, we see him choosing to resist responsibility. He doesn't want to take advantage of getting into a prestigious school, and even chooses to get every question on his true-false test wrong. So it's not surprising that when he's first bitten, he resists and actively does not want to take on the mantle of Spider-Man.
You're like me.
I don't want to be.
When he watches Peter Parker fighting off multiple bad guys, he knows he should help, but realizes,
Who am I kidding? I should not do that.
here he's choosing passivity rather than making an active decision. Regardless, Miles learns that his choices have ripple effects. Peter Parker dies. Though it's not implied he blames himself for Parker's death, he does blame himself for not doing anything to try to stop it, as indicated the next time he's faced with a similar situation.
I can't sit there and just let Spider-Man die without doing anything about it. I'm not doing that again.
We start seeing Miles make active choices, like choosing to help Peter B. Parker steal trade secrets. We also see Miles taking responsibility for the promises he's made.
Look, I made a promise, so I have to keep it.
This underscores the way the theme of choice is used as a new take on the cliché Spider-Man theme of,
With great power comes
Don't
great...
you dare finish that sentence. Don't do it. I'm sick of it.
In the first 2/3 of the film, we watch Miles accept his new identity and express desire to keep the promises he made to Peter Parker and save the glitching spider people. But we start to realize that Miles' choice to embrace being Spider-Man won't be enough, as he can't control his finicky powers. However, in the next pivotal scene, Miles asks Peter B. Parker,
When will I know I'm ready?
You won't. It's a leap of faith.
Here, the film posits a so-called leap of faith, or the choice to take a chance and embrace the scary unknown, which here means diving into a dangerous situation without knowing if you're ready. Miles is able to take this leap after an encouraging monologue from his father, who says a lot of adorable daddish stuff like,
I see this spark in you. It's amazing. It's why I push you, but it's yours. Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great.
The message seems to be that the choice to believe in oneself is ultimately the most important choice of all. As soon as Miles is able to do that, he goes from sticky fingers to smooth operator. Well, at least when it comes to Spider-Maning, he could still use some work in the romance department.
Friends?
Friends.
It's also worth noting that Peter B. Parker similarly undergoes a leap of faith in oneself when he returns to his own dimension and, rather than bemoaning his fate, attempts to fix it. He reconciles with MJ, presumably in the hopes of finally making his dad bod dad certified, even though he doesn't know if he's ready to change diapers.
Are all kids?
So there you have it, a film with truly smart screenwriting that uses quantum theory thematically to mirror the main character's larger emotional arc. Smart? Yes, but deep, like deep dish pizza, deep like... Wait a second, what's the deal with this? Argument 2, is Great Expectations a great, deep, or dumb reference? Charles Dickens' novel Great Expectations becomes a recurring reference in the film. Miles' English class is reading the book, he gets assigned to write an essay on it after deliberately failing a test, and he even riffs on the book's title in his graffiti art. The recurring presence of this novel, on its face, seems to imply that Miles has the potential to go from average Brooklyn kid to truly dope superhero, that he will literally go from having no expectations to living up to majorly great expectations. After his uncle dies, Miles throws the notebook with his Great Expectations graffiti art out of the window, as if giving up on the task before him. In direct rebuttal, Peter B. Parker throws the notebook right back at him, as if insisting that he live up to the great Spider-Man name. So, surface level reference or deep thematic connection? It appears to just be a surface level nod to Dickens' novel, as it doesn't really speak to what the book is about. Importantly, it seems to ignore the fact that Dickens' novel deals heavily in irony and satire, and his protagonist Pip is something of a punchline. A blacksmith's nephew and apprentice, Pip is obsessed with improving his status and becoming more sophisticated so he can win over his truly unpleasant love interest Estella. While Miles is special in spite of his initial desire to just be normal and generally not live up to his potential, Pip believes that he is special and entitled to more than his humble lot in life, and thus spends the book attempting to realize the great expectations he has for himself. The entire story is told from the point of view of an older Pip who has since learned that his expectations were baloney. In contrast, Miles learns over the course of the film that his expectations for himself need to be higher. You could read them as foils to one another, but we don't really see how that contrast deepens the meaning or adds anything much of value to the film. So we're going to say that in this interpretation, the film is deep with a debatably kinda dumb literary reference. Argument 3, the Spiderverse as eye candy. There's one more layer to this film that we'd be dumb not to mention, its visuals. From a purely aesthetic perspective, this film is absolutely revolutionary. For context, basically since 1995 when Pixar released the first CGI animated feature Toy Story, the lamp-loving studio has set the standard for what modern animation should look like. You'd recognize that aesthetic anywhere. Shiny surfaces, clean lines, highly realistic imagery. Now, we love Pixar as much as the next emotionally stunted millennial, but we'd argue that Spider-Verse is so visually stunning because it blatantly refuses to conform to the Pixar look. Instead, the film fully embraces the comic book aesthetic, becoming increasingly more comic book-like as Miles transforms into Spider-Man. This is even clear from the opening moments, which show the Sony logo fading into Ben-Day dots. Ben-Day dots are those tiny circles you see in some comic books, usually in the colors of cyan, magenta, yellow, or black. They were initially used by comic book illustrators in the early to mid-1900s to create a sense of depth and tonal range on the cheap. Printing a bunch of tiny dots was less expensive than printing large swaths of solid color. Comic book artists today will often use Ben-Day dots to indicate a flashback or evoke a more retro aesthetic. The geniuses behind Spider-Verse's animation employ Ben-Day dots throughout the film, particularly during moments of emotional intensity. In this way, they mimic the aesthetic that accompanied some of the earliest Spider-Man comics in the 60s. Through sheer inventiveness, it debatedly does more to evoke the original Spider-Man experience than any other rendition before it. Other comic book visual effects also work their way into the film, from the written sound effects to actual paneling to the Spidey sense. By incorporating so many hallmark qualities of comic books, the film inherently defends the oft-maligned medium. At the same time, the film also visually pays homage to another frequently derided medium, street art. First, Miles literally creates eye-popping street art, and we watch the long, laborious process that entails. Then, the shapes and colors of Miles' art return with a vengeance later on when the Super Collider is turned on. Also, he spray paints his Spidey suit, giving it a graffitied aesthetic. Some of the film's most visually masterful moments occur when it's directly evoking street art, so that's pretty cool too. The film elevates both the street art and comic book aesthetic, making a compelling argument for the artistic merits of both. For all these reasons, we're inclined to see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse as a pretty deep film. Couching Miles' arc in quantum theory is so sharp, and the visuals are on point. The Great Expectations thing, it can't ruin this fun and heartwarming film. But what do you guys think? Is there indeed more to the Miles Morales story than meets the eye, or is our Peter Tingle way off track?